Jai Ho students, I am Ratnakar Suryavanshi from SK Public School. So in the last class, we have already learned about the economic hardship that prevailed in Europe. I mean, we have learned about the economic depression of Europe on the topic called hunger, hardship and popular revolt. And in that also at the end we have learnt about France only. In 1848 what happened in France. And even I told you that during the time of 1848 a king of France was Louis Philippe. He was a king. And even important point I would like to add in that Louis Philippe's period, I mean 1830 to 1848, Louis Philippe's ruling period in France. So this Louis Philippe's rule is known as July Monarch. It is known as July Monarch. So about these all the things we have, I mean about the Louis Philippe we have learned how, as I told you, that he fled. I mean he went out of the Paris city and then National Assembly declared France as a republic country and granted universal adult franchise. Adult franchise, I mean only to the male, that universal adult male franchise. Why? Because male franchise, because right to vote was granted only to the males aged more than 21 years. Only to them right to vote was granted. And even right to work was also guaranteed by establishing national workshops in France, especially in Paris. About these things we have already learned in the last class. So today we will learn the next topic. That next topic is the revolution of the liberals. So first, if we take the point liberals, you know that who are liberals already, correct? No? The people who were in the favor of freedom, who fought for freedom, who fought for liberty, those are called as liberals, obviously. So their revolution, about that we are learning, we will learn today. So let's start about this. See, during the time of 1848 only, in the year of 1848, poor people as well as unemployed, starvant peasants as well as workers started fights, or workers started revolts in all over Europe. It is who had started revolts? Poor people, unemployed as well as peasants, extremely poverty. Those who were in poverty, those peasants as well as workers started revolts in various cities, various towns, or in various nation states of Europe. And at the same time, this revolt, as I told you, it was started in 1848. At the same time, parallel to the revolts of poor and unemployed peasants, workers, parallel to their revolts, middle class people, educated middle class people also led the revolution in Europe. They too led the revolution in Europe, that too in 1848. So about that, say, the February events of 1848 in France brought the monarch to the abdication. I mean, see, already in the last period, I told you in the last class that Louis Philippe was there. He fled out of the Paris because of the revolution, because of the rebellion, or because of the fight started by the people of Paris, because of the problem called unemployment and the other problems we consider here. Other problem means the high prices of food also. So because of this, what happened? When they came on the road, I mean when the people started the revolt, at that time Louis Philippe actually. So he fled out of the city. So all those events took place in the month of February. All those events took place in the month of February. So the February events, whatever happened in Paris, whatever happened in France, all those events of February 1848 brought the monarch to the end. to the abdication. Abdication means, you know, that we in Kannada we call padatyaga, I mean resignation commonly, I mean leaving that post or designation. So because of the events of February of 1848, monarch Louis Philippe's rule came to an end or ended. And then the republic, I mean what happened, you know, that republic, National Assembly declared France as a republic country, that too granting universal male franchise, those who aged above the 21 years. And this was all happened in France. So at the same time, because after this all, after the events which took place in France after this, by inspiring these events, the various men and women, middle class men and women in various areas, various territories which were not called or which were not existed as independent nation states at that time. At that time means during the time of 1848. At this time, the territories which were under the control of various monarchs, various empires, in all those territories, in all those areas of Europe, men and women, especially educated middle class men and women, they combined their demand for constitutionalism with the creation of nation state. For example, say, as I told you, the areas or the territories which were not existed at that time or during the time of 1848 as independent nation states, which were those important areas, see, Germany, Italy, Poland, Austro-Hungarian Empire. In these all the territories, in these all the areas, men as well as women of the educated middle class, liberal middle class, they combined their demand for constitutionalism with national unification. Constitutionalism, what is the meaning of constitutionalism? Commonly, constitutionalism, shortly we can understand here as constitutional monarch. Constitutional monarch. So, men and women of the liberal or educated middle class, they combined their demand, and for what? What was their demand? Their demand was the constitutionalism with national unification. I mean, monarch should be controlled by one fine constitution, and particular territory should be independent, should be considered, should be turned into a nation state. So this was the demand of liberal middle class men and women. And to fulfill their demand, to get fulfill their demand, those middle class or liberal men and liberal middle class men and women, they took advantage of growing popular unrest to push their demands for the creation of a nation state on parliamentary principles. What they did, they took the help of the popular growing unrest. Here unrest means what? Unhappiness, discontent about the rule of monarch. It was growing. It was growing in Europe. It was growing in these areas. So, in these territories, the opposition to the monarch was growing. So, that opposition became an advantage to the liberal middle class men and women. They took the help of that opposition to push their demand. To push their demand means to make their demands much stronger, to get fulfill their demand by taking the help of the growing popular unrest for the creation of a nation state on parliamentary principles. They took the help of that discontent of the people about the monarch, and by this they tried to create the nation state on parliamentary principles. On what? On parliamentary principles. What are those parliamentary principles? First one is constitution. Parliamentary principles, I am telling, first one is constitution, second one is freedom of press, second one is freedom of press, and the third one is freedom of the association. Freedom of the association means the right to form own unions, trade unions or other unions. This is what we call right to form association. So on these basis, they tried to form a nation state. These bases are the parts of parliamentary principles. So on the basis of parliamentary principles, liberal middle class men and women in various areas at that time which were not there as independent nation states like German, Italy, Poland, Austro-Hungarian Empire, in those men and women of the liberal middle class, they tried to form or to create a nation state on parliamentary principles. So this is about the revolution of the liberals.